Hello, everyone, and welcome to RTS Masterminds. We are now back as we were working towards game releases. Brandon over there succeeded, I did not, but we're working on it. I'm Balint Martin, and I'm the lead systems designer at Grimlore Games with a long history in RTSs. Worked on Halo Wars 2, Total War, Warhammer 2 and 3, and Age of Mythology as well. Still playing all these, and I'm also a tournament host and caster. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, you're a busy guy. I'm Brandon. I'm the lead game designer on Tempest Rising. We launched totally on purpose on April 17th. Supposed to be the 24th, but I'm sure we'll get into that in a minute. But Tempest Rising's the biggest game I've been a part of, but I also run the Wayward Strategy blog, and when I have time, I did the occasional competitive commentary as well. Um, but yeah, I've also consulted on a number of smaller projects, but Tempest Rising is really the first big release, and I'm still kind of flabbergasted and overwhelmed that it even ended up happening. So,
Yeah, it's
yep.
definitely awesome. So, yeah, first off, just congratulations. That is going to be the topic for today for us. It's very practical to already have Brandon in place on the RTS Masterminds
That
team.
worked out.
Yeah, that worked. It was an investment, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, let's do a quick interview. With you as the
Sure.
lead designer, I think is the proper title, right?
Yeah, I'm the
Like you don't
the
split
lead
the
designer on
departments.
the game. Yeah. So the way it works out on our team is game design and level design are different disciplines, and we have a systems team that is mostly programming. Um, and then we have a separate skirmish team that's the skirmish AI. Um, so game design is kind of its own separate kind of bucket in the company.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that the launch seems very successful. You know, you got over like an almost 10,000 player peak. That's pretty amazing for a new RTS to just launch like that. And, you know, people seem to love it. The reviews are sky high, almost touching on that 90% even now. It's been weeks now since the launch, right? So, yeah, that's awesome. What's the mood like among the studio people or the entire team?
Well, well, look, most RTS that have launched in the past 10 years have not gotten an 89% positive user score on Steam. Steam is a the player base that reviews on Steam are pretty harsh on your average RTS. So the fact that we are 5,000 reviews deep and still sitting at 89% has completely blown myself and the team away. The really overwhelming. We were kind of stealing ourselves for what we felt was likely to happen. I mean, we feel like we put together a good RTS, but there's a lot of decent RTS out there that have really harsh review scores. Um, and the fact that we were received so well by players is really meaningful and emotionally overwhelming. And the fact that we've gotten a lot of really good review scores from across the board. I think we put out a trailer recently that went over some of that, but Metacritic, I think the last time I checked, I didn't check today, but it was 80%. Um, and we got as high as 85 from PC Gamer and 90% from I think one of the smaller outlets. So yeah, really, really thrilled with the critical and player reception
Mhm.
across the board.
Yeah, it's definitely a great accomplishment, and you know, any partying that you're doing, you've definitely deserved. So we already roughly described what role you have as lead designer, but could you specify a little bit more so that you know people at home, our listeners, would understand better what you do day to day?
The way I like to put it is my role is whatever they let me get away with doing. Um, I mean, it's true. I enjoy every part of this. When I was brought on, the kind of expectation or thought is that I would write some documentation, sit in some meetings, and that would probably be the majority of it. But I've designed several of the multiplayer maps. I was involved in testing a lot of the campaign missions over and over again. I designed all the factions, the tech trees. I did the pacing, combat. I've implemented several of the units as well as most of the multiplayer balancing. In Tempest Rising, we have a system where it's actually a really flexible system that lets us have separate data definitions for single player and multiplayer. And we can
Oh,
just
that's great.
continually create new ones for any variety of situations. We did a whole test before launch with the GDF where we were testing out some of their changes, and we just created a whole separate definition and applied that definition to some of the maps. And we would kind of A/B test like map by map. Um, so it's been really flexible and really useful for us.
That's super nice, and you should be like pretty easily able to deploy that for patches as well, then, right?
Yeah, yeah. There's a couple of things that kind of go outside of the unit definition system, but like 97% of the content we can just say we can target it specifically to where we need it to go. Um, but I mean, I write a lot of documentation. Is a lot of what happens. We get design questions, and we discuss that internally in the design team. And one or more of us will be asked to put out documentation based on that goes to mostly the systems team or one of the other programming teams. Um, but I like getting my hands dirty, and I've had the opportunity to be involved in a lot of different things about the game, including every single tooltip and most of the text in the game was at least touched by me
Wow.
in some way.
Yeah, you really went everywhere and did everything. Interesting. Not every designer does that, by the way. Like it's as you said at the beginning, usually a lead would be in meetings, maybe doing some documentation, yes, but rarely getting their hands dirty. Depends. How big is your team actually?
Right now it's about 40 people.
No,
Um,
your team, your
oh,
design
my
team.
team. Sorry. I thought you meant the whole team. Um,
That's interesting too, to be
right
fair.
now there's about 6 of us right now. Um, and we're called the design/direction team.
Mm.
We kind of do both. Where we're involved in game direction things and game design. But we have some members that kind of come in and out based on need. So
Okay, leave some for the rest, man. Yeah. But yeah, that's really cool. Very interesting setup you've got there. Yeah, but moving on to the next thing. Obviously, Tempest Rising is very much like a Command and Conquer game. It's got sort of a similar DNA, to say the least. It's obviously a respectful iteration of what that type of game entails. But could you describe a little bit why you guys specifically went for that, and in what way you detracted, and why that was necessary?
Um, so a lot of this comes back to Fred Schreiber, the CEO. When he was a young man, when he was a kid, he fell in love with Tiberian Dawn and Red Alert, and he's always wanted to make something Command and Conquer flavored. It's not like I think we've said this several times in other interviews, but this wasn't something that we went out and were like targeting. We did this because we wanted to play something like this. And being able to do that in today's uh RTS, market was really fortunate. That we were able to say we believe in this type of game. We want to make this. Um, we're excited about this. Let's do it. And we were really fortunate to be able to find not just a publisher, but actually a series of publishers who believed in us and let us do that. Um, so yeah, I feel really fortunate that we were able to kind of do this based entirely on passion and love. Um, but in the late 2010s, it was like 2019, I got an opportunity to be a part of a focus group where Slipgate was putting together an RTS, and already at that point, it was pretty explicitly targeting kind of that flavor or genre, and that was kind of like I had been bouncing around a lot of different RTS subgenres. I'd done a lot of Company of Heroes, and I'd kind of really gotten back in a big way into um, Command and Conquer 3. And I mean, you know me, I have a lot of crazy ideas and theories and um, such that I like to bat around about the genre. And at the time, I was really captivated with that kind of subgenre of RTS anyway. And obviously, I've spent the last 6 years almost marinating in it at this point. um, but yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting things that Company of Heroes. I'm sorry. That the Command and Conquer style RTS has done, and I've gotten a lot of uh, ability and opportunity to play around with the various permutations of kind of that flavor or system. Um, and I think it's been really good experience for me as a designer, as well as for me as a player.
Cool, that
And
makes
at
sense.
some point there, I just
Yeah,
at some
go on.
point there, I just kind of started running my mouth. So I don't know how close I was to the question at that point.
Right. Well, that was the part about what about the formula you guys changed that, in your view, was very important compared to the classic CNC games.
Um, yeah, so there are some things that, I mean, my goal as a designer was always to create something that stands on its own merits. We didn't want to create something that people liked because it felt like Command and Conquer. We wanted people to like Tempest Rising because it was Tempest Rising, not because it reminded them of CNC. And I think largely we've managed to hit that. Um, we've brought people in, I think, because of some of the similarities that we have. Um, but we've gotten a lot of positive reactions to some of the stuff that we've done that's unique to us. Um, and that's also again been pretty gratifying.
Any personal
And some of
highlights
this,
for that?
um, well, during development and during our demos and betas, some of the things that we were concerned about were our specialist system, and I'll talk about that briefly. Um, in Command and Conquer and in the Red Alert games, you have commando units, and they're not really a hero unit. They're fragile. They're really high impact, but they're way at the end of the tech tree. You get them in some missions, but in multiplayer, you basically never see them. They're really expensive. They're hard to get to. And what I really wanted to do was experience more of that sort of thing. And we both know that hero units are controversial in RTS. Warcraft 3 kind of sets the standard for that about the game kind of becoming about the hero. And some people love that and some people hate that. I mean, as with most things, it's really controversial. Um, but what I was trying to do with the specialist was create something that was kind of like part support unit, part hero, part commando. Um, and at some points during development, um, we had players ignoring them. We had players not really kind of vibing with what we were doing. But now that we've launched, it's become a pretty popular feature. We've had players like discussing their favorite specialists and their favorite specialist combos. And there's actually a pretty popular at the time we're recording this strategy for the dynasty where they go fast. They go for quick access to their specialists and they do triple machinist. The machinist is kind of a utility army support specialist, but what he does is he has a pretty good area of effect attack, and a lot of GDF players are going really heavy infantry, and he just mows them down. So three machinist is actually really good at clearing out this pretty common GDF strategy. And it's really gratifying to see that and see people talking the pros and cons, and that's been really cool to see. Another thing is our Doctrine System. And I don't think the Doctrine System is something particularly unique. There's a lot of RTS out there with kind of meta tech trees. With ours, you get there's 18 possible options in 3 trees. And that's 3 trees with 6 options each. And you can choose 11 of them in multiplayer, actually in campaign too, because that just works out with how many missions there are right now in the campaign. And again, that was something that wasn't super popular in some of our betas and demos. But I always designed it to be what I call a long tail solution. The more you learn about the game, the more you engage with it, the more you see the benefits. And that's actually been happening, where people are in our Discord talking about their different builds and what doctrines they go for and when and why and what that does for them. And obviously there's some that are maybe a little overtuned at this point. We're looking at balancing some air units because air has some pretty powerful strategies right now. And part of that's because of the doctrines and how much of a boost these units get with the particular doctrine set that they're chosen. But yeah, so that's something that I'm happy to see, that the more people engage with it, the more people realize what we built and appreciate the system. So as the designer who's watched these things, originally be viewed with skepticism and grow on people over time, it's been really cool to see.
Yeah, that's the power of iteration right there. Hopefully you can keep it going too. Yeah, moving on. Thanks for that answer. That was really good, actually. We already spoke about the authenticity of the CNC-ness of the game, basically. But how come you kept some of the most the more old parts as well? Is something I wanted to ask. Like, for example, the UI is something that you kept just the way it was, but with some modernization. Could you talk a little bit about that part?
Yeah, I think I can talk to that a little bit. So for our team, we kind of got to a point where we hit a UI that worked, and we had to keep building on top of it. As with every game development project, we had ups and downs, and we had contractions and expansions and contractions and expansions of our timeline, and some things were kind of expensive to worry about iterating on. And I think there's some benefits to it, like familiarity for people who like that kind of game. It's something they can look at and say, "Oh, I understand how this is going to work." Um, there are, and I can't talk specifics at this point, but there are quality of life things we're working on building on top of that to make it feel more comfortable for your average player. But as with everything, we started making choices about what was going to go into launch and what would have to be
Oh no,
pushed
sorry, I
past
wasn't
launch.
really trying to nitpick about the quality of life. That's obviously coming, but like the high-level design decision to do the sidebar UI versus a classic bottom UI
Yeah,
setup.
so that specifically was something that we had that was even predates me being on the project. So that's something that um, we chose. We chose to do in some cases like a wink and a nod, like our Dynasty barracks kind of looks like the hand of Nod from Command and Conquer. Um, that's a fun little wink to players who recognize that. Um, but RTS isn't one community, right? There's a bunch of communities.
Yes.
And what we always wanted to do was serve the core audience really well. There's a lot of games out there that tried to be all things to all people, and that waters them down. And we really wanted to focus on doing the core thing justice.
Mhm.
And giving the game a sidebar UI sends a real message to people that play that type of game and prefer that type of game. Um, I also think practically there's some benefits in with as monitor aspect ratios have grown wider, um, to using a little bit of the horizontal space, because there's a lot more horizontal space than vertical space. Um, but really, I think one of the things that our team did well was to focus on keeping the core experience pure, and to keep our core audience in mind. We didn't try to come out and become the next big esport. We didn't try to come out um, and do everything all at once. We had a really good campaign. We had kind of the necessary multiplayer system, and we're still doing things like adding a ranked 2v2 with friends. Um, but I think we did our best to choose what was going to make the best impression on people day one, on the most people day one, and I think that responded.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely on day one, I was very happy that there was already ranked multiplayer to begin with, because most RTSs actually launch without one. Like they would just do a quick match. So as someone that really is into this, I'm like, hell yes. But that there are, like you said, choices to be made when you release a new RTS, and timelines are always limited, and so on. That does mean that, let's say, multiplayer didn't get its spectator mode really, or its replay mode. Are these things that you guys are working towards? They are not necessarily for
So
esports, right? Necessarily, but if you really want to commentate or learn as a competitive player, you need those replays.
yeah, so specifically, what I'm able to talk about at this point is in our closed beta and in our multiplayer demo, we had a fledgling partial version of our spectator system. Um, and we've already confirmed that we're finalizing the spectator system. Um, and I can't wait to get that into the game. That I do commentaries when I have time to do so. I really enjoy that. I watch a lot of them. To me personally, super important. Um, so I can confirm 100% spectator mode is coming soon. TM. I don't have timelines for anything. I can't talk about those. Um, but at least that's coming, and we can confirm, and that's a start. Um, so that's what I'm able to talk about at this point.
Okay, so no comment on the replays just yet.
I can't say anything either way.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, that will enable content creators to cover matches, and there are other RTSs that actually don't have a replay mode. I worked on one, Aloverse, so I perfectly get it. we also launched without both, and eventually released that. The spectator mode, and then people started doing commentaries, and it really spread the
Nice.
game to new people. So I'm really hopeful that it will happen for you guys as well, um, just the same way. um, I guess regarding new people, actually we have a pretty good segue here. What about managing the player base overall? That's usually a very challenging task, isn't it? And you are very easily losing the initial batch of high interest. It was 9K players, now it's more like 2 and 3K. Um, how do you intend to keep the player numbers pumping?
Well, look, Tempest Rising is a traditional quote unquote box product. Um, this game uh, came out, it launched as a product. We have updates that we're going to continue doing for it. But every game ever made launches with the peak and then it goes down.
Yep.
If you look at our curves compared to many other games, it's actually fairly shallow. We have a lot of people came in, they did the campaign maybe multiple times. they enjoyed it. The fact that we still have over 2,000 players during peak isn't terrible, actually. But like if you look at the big guys like Age of Empires 4, they launched with 70,000 people, and then they dropped down. The market, it was like and they still have a lot of people playing, but no one's out there, I don't think, judging them harshly for not having 70,000 players, concurrent players right now. So um, I think saying like being a doomsayer about having a peak and then dropping off, I think that's a little bit of an exaggeration because um, it's not like we went to 100 people or
Oh yeah, definitely.
less. We've given the features we have, we've actually retained players pretty well at this point. Um,
Yeah, it's
that
more
being said,
about, I
obviously
think. Sorry, go on.
we have we have additional content coming. Again, I talked about 2v2. I talked about spectator mode. We've also always planned on releasing the Veti as our third playable faction. They are coming. They're going to be added to the game, and I think we're going to see a lot of people come back to check them out when they're added. Um, and there are additional plans that I can't talk about, but we have other stuff coming that we think people will come back to experience. Um,
Solid.
um, and I am a big believer in um, balance and QOL patches. I'm taking nods from the industry standards. When we release balance patches, we're going to explain every change. I've already written up that for the next patch that I have waiting to come out. Um, but yeah, this is the biggest game that Slipgate has launched. Um, and we've got some great publishing partners that are helping us with that stuff, but it's still something we're kind of getting used to in terms of getting the quality of life stuff and the kind of patch cadence coming out. um so there is stuff coming, but we're not ready to talk about what at this point, but we do have plans.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I wasn't trying to diss the numbers. Like you said, it is a moderately nice curve, right? And other games like AoE4 that you mentioned did fall off a cliff and then eventually had to recover through massive DLC drops, which, that's typically the way RTSs go, that you have to essentially release significant content to bring players back, and then that's how you keep your retention. You just keep repeating that over and over. It was a strategy we actually employed at Creative Assembly with Warhammer. It's still being done. That's probably one of the biggest examples of player retention through content. So if it's anything similar like that, the stuff that you can't talk about, then I think you'll be just fine. But ultimately, people come back for content, right?
Right.
Okay.
I'm really
Lastly,
excited about.
yeah.
Go
What
ahead.
are you excited about?
The Veti, getting the Veti out there. Um, a lot of stuff with Tempest Rising. I've been like, why did they let me get away with doing this? And the Veti is the same way. Like,
We'll find out soon,
but
TM.
yeah, exactly.
We also have some questions from patron supporters, by the way.
Nice.
So Cal Boone says that he loves the status effects that pop up on units. What inspired their use?
Um, so in early 2024, we um we kind of got some developers that were working on other projects on the team, and that gave us an opportunity to kind of revisit how some of the stuff was done in the game, and that was a big one from our lead UI designer and our Lead QA. Um, they kind of came up with that system as a way to help make things more understandable and intelligible in the game. And I think it's one of the best additions that we made in the last year because it really helps people understand what's happening. And it can be a little overwhelming if a big area of effect drops and you've got like 1,000 icons that show up. But I think people get used to it pretty quick, and it only hovers there for a second or two. Um, but yeah, I'm really proud of that system, even though I didn't have much to do with it. But I think it had a phenomenal impact. Again, I was allowed to put in all these status effects and things, and I think it really helped people to be able to understand what was going on and how it works.
Yeah, definitely the game is very content rich as well, so there's a lot of them. um, Another question from Kaboon is, what was the most challenging part of development?
Um, that's a good question. It's a tough question to answer, honestly. What was the most challenging part of development? I mean, for for me, and I think for the team, one of the big things that is tough to get right is what to prioritize. You know, that eh, you know what needs to be done, um, but the order in which stuff needs to be done can surprise you sometimes. So pretty much after every demo, we had we had a big kind of period where we ingested what players were saying. We tried to prioritize based on different weighting functions. Um, but that was something that happened uh, pretty often, was trying to figure out what we knew we wanted to do versus what we felt like players felt was important, and being able to get that where it needed to be. Um, that was one of the bigger challenges, um, to me.
Sounds like any game ever. That's
Yeah, exactly.
prioritization is always very difficult. That's for sure. Uh, there's another question
And these
here.
things can kind of take on a life of their own, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, and sometimes you make wrong choices because it felt right at the time, but then later you kick yourself. It Game dev is hard. It's not an exact science either.
Yeah,
There's one more final question from
absolutely.
Kaboon. What is your design process for the factions? Like, was there a lot of iteration for the GDF and Dynasty?
Uh, yeah, actually. So, one of the first things I did when I came on board was we had kind of a working or in progress um, uh, design philosophy. And one of the first things I did when I came on board was to go over that whole process and redo it and finalize it and let's see it. That's very important to me personally, is to understand what template, what pattern you're working off of. Um, and from there, I produced a document that was trying to outline what the faction is, not just mechanically, but also like politically and psychologically, and being able to say, like, who are these people? Why do they fight the way that they do? For me, it was an iterative process of going to um, like, what types of weapons do the GDF use? The GDF, we are saying they are really focused on battlefield awareness. What does that look like? Why would that be important to them? Um, so in answering those questions, it's kind of a like I said, a cyclical process, an iterative process of saying, um, this is what we want to communicate. This is how we would do it mechanically. Well, this is something we want to do. How would that look um, if we were trying to implement something that felt like that? Um, so that's kind of how we came up with the idea that the GDF had um, their comms buff. What does it look like when this organization wants to excuse me, like keep tabs on what's going on in the battlefield? What does it mean that they have superior communications networks? Well, that means that they respond more quickly when there's a threat, right? So that turned into the comms buff where they move and attack faster. That's supposed to represent mechanically how they function logistically. So we did a lot of that kind of process of who are these people? How do we communicate that as a system? Who are these people? How do we communicate that as a system? And kind of rolling those systems over and over, and refining them and keeping them focused on physically communicating the story via systems. Um, and that's the dynasty are willing to do anything it takes to win. That's why they literally hurt themselves to do bonus damage. They've got several units that have the Tempest Dynamos where they take damage over time in order to attack faster. And we've got a whole bunch of doctrines that go over that too. There's actually one that causes them to take 40% less damage while they have Tempest Dynamos active, and that's become pretty popular in some builds, to tech into that and then use Dynamos for everything because it makes your units much, much harder to kill.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks
Um,
for sharing that as well. And as a closer, what is your favorite aspect of the campaign? Something you want to really highlight for people to go in, even if they're, let's say, only playing multiplayer.
for the campaign. Um, so I think we did a pretty good job of in the campaign giving players a variety of missions. There's some missions that have a similar kind of mechanical premise. We've got several where you have like a group of units and you go across the map and you take a base and then you do things from there. But we have really made an effort to make our mission types varied. Um, so you get to experience a lot of different kinds of play from being defensive, from having to push out, from um, kind of commando missions to saving civilians. And we got pretty fun with the Veti missions in the last couple missions of the campaign, where you're fighting this weird alien threat, and they teleport entire bases in on top of you and stuff. Um, so I think just the gameplay and the variety is something that I think we did a pretty good job with.
Awesome. Any final thoughts, any message you want to share to everybody listening?
Um, I'm really glad I got a chance to be a part of this. I'm really hopeful for the future as we continue to work on the game. Um, I think we did really what we set out to do, which is to create a game that is inherently, fundamentally just enjoyable to experience. Um, and I'm hoping that that pays off as we continue to put content out there and yeah. So I hope anyone who gives it a try enjoys it and has a good time. That's all I can really ask.
Nice one. Well, you all can find Tempest Rising over on Steam. Plenty of social media websites have a Tempest Rising account as well, specifically. You guys got a website
Yeah,
even that explains it in more detail than the store page does. Highly recommend taking a look at that as well. And obviously, there's plenty
and
of
there's
content
some
creators now covering it, so take a
and there's
look.
some good fan wikis on WikiGG. I think has one.
Ooh,
Um,
didn't know that.
yeah, they've done a good job of like putting all the unit stats up there, and I think they go down into like doing the quotes and everything. They've done a really good job of putting that in there. So yeah, thanks for taking the time to talk with me about this. Like I said, it's very surreal being able to be a part of something like this.
Yeah, great. And congratulations again. Thanks for doing the interview, especially. And yeah, last thing, RTS Masterminds. Our show is all over all the podcast platforms. You can find it basically wherever you go. Of course, on YouTube. And we have a Patreon if you want to support us some as well, where we drop the content a little bit earlier than elsewhere. And with that, I think we can say bye-bye for now. We'll be back soon with a new topic. And patrons can, of course, request topics. That's a feature we've got.
Yep, keep those questions coming.
Please do. Take care, everyone.